The sky was on fire. Cole gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup truck and watched the streak of light tear across the evening sky. It was not a shooting star. It was too big, too slow, and too bright. The light burned with colors he had never seen before: purple, silver, a strange green that seemed to glow from inside. He pulled his truck to the side of the empty mountain road and stepped out. The cold Montana air hit his face, but he did not feel it. He was too busy watching the thing fall. It disappeared behind the pine trees about 2 miles away. A moment later, the ground shook. A deep boom echoed through the valley, and a column of fire rose above the tree line. It was a volunteer firefighter. He had been one for 12 years. He fixed cars and trucks at his small shop in Cedar Falls during the day, and he answered emergency calls whenever they came. It was a simple life. He liked it that way. He should have called it in. He should have waited for backup. That was the smart thing to do. But something in his gut told him there was no time. He got back in his truck and drove toward the fire. The road ended about half a mile from the crash site. Grabbed his heavy jacket, a flashlight, and a fire extinguisher from the back of his truck. He knew it would not be enough. He went anyway. The forest was already filling with smoke, strange smoke. It smelled like burning metal and something else, something chemical that made his eyes water. He pulled his jacket over his nose and mouth and kept moving. When he reached the crash site, he stopped. It was not a plane. It was not a helicopter. It was something else entirely. The craft was shaped like a teardrop, maybe 50 feet long. Its surface was smooth and silver, but now it was torn open, burning with those strange colors he had seen in the sky. Purple flames licked at the edges of the hull. Green fire poured from holes in the metal. Had seen a lot of fires in his life. House fires, car fires, forest fires, but he had never seen anything like this. He should have been afraid. Part of him was. But then he heard something that pushed the fear away. A scream, high and thin, the voice of a child. Ran toward the burning wreck. The heat hit him like a wall. It was worse than anything he had ever felt. The flames were hotter than normal fire, and they seemed to reach for him, hungry and alive. He raised his arm to shield his face and pushed forward. There was a hole in the side of the ship, torn open by the crash. Climbed through it, ignoring the way the hot metal burned his hands. The inside was filled with smoke and flickering lights. Strange machines beeped and sparked. The walls were curved and smooth, covered with symbols he could not read. He heard the scream again, closer now. Followed the sound through the smoke. He found a corridor, then a room. And in that room he found something impossible. A girl, but not a human girl. Her skin was pale blue, the color of winter sky. Her hair was silver, long and tangled, now matted with something dark and wet. Her eyes were large and purple, filled with tears and terror. She was small, maybe 12 years old by human standards, and she was trapped. A metal beam had fallen across her legs. She was pulling at it, crying, but she was not strong enough to move it. Behind her, the flames were getting closer. For 1 second just stared. His brain tried to make sense of what he was seeing. An alien, a real alien, a child from another world. Then the girl looked at him. Her purple eyes met his brown ones, and in that moment she was not an alien. She was just a scared kid who needed help. Moved. He grabbed the metal beam with both hands. It was hot, so hot that he could smell his own skin burning. He did not let go. He pulled with everything he had, his muscles screaming, his teeth clenched. The beam moved, just a little, just enough. The girl understood. She pulled her legs free and scrambled backward. She was hurt, he could see that. There was violet blood on her legs and she could barely stand, but she was alive. Reached for her. She flinched away, pressing herself against the wall. She was afraid of him. Of course she was. He was a stranger, a creature she had probably never seen before. He knelt down so he was at her level. He made his voice as soft and calm as he could manage. "It's okay," he said. "I've got you, I've got you." She did not understand his words, but something in his voice, in his face, made her stop pulling away. Slowly, carefully, she let him pick her up. She weighed almost nothing in his arms. Her skin was cool against his burned hands. She wrapped her thin arms around his neck and held on tight. Turned to leave, then he saw the other one. A woman, the same blue skin, the same silver hair, but older. She was pinned under a pile of debris near the far wall, unconscious, maybe dead, he could not tell. The girl saw her too. She pointed and made a sound that was not a word but was clearly a cry for help. Looked at the flames, they were spreading fast. He looked at the woman, he looked at the girl in his arms. He made a decision. He carried the girl out of the ship first. He set her down on the cold grass, far from the flames. She grabbed at his arm, crying, pointing back at the ship. She was saying something in a language he could not understand, but he knew what she meant. He went back in. The fire was worse now. A section of the ceiling had collapsed. The smoke was so thick he could barely see. Got down low and crawled toward where he had seen the woman. He found her. She was still alive. He could see her chest rising and falling. It took everything he had to move the debris off her. His arms were shaking. His hands were raw and bleeding. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. He dragged her out of the ship just as something inside exploded. The force of it knocked him off his feet. He covered the woman's body with his own as pieces of burning metal rained down around them. Then he picked her up and carried her to safety. When he finally set her down beside the girl, his legs gave out. He collapsed on the cold ground, staring up at the stars. Somewhere above him, the girl was crying and holding her mother. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear sirens. Closed his eyes. He did not know that he had just changed the future of two worlds. He did not know that beings across the galaxy would soon speak his name. All he knew was that his hands hurt, his lungs burned, and two people who needed help were now safe. That was enough. Had never been so scared in her life. She sat on the cold grass holding her mother's hand, watching the strange creature that had saved them. He was lying on the ground a few feet away. His eyes were closed. His breathing was rough and uneven. His hands were covered in burns and blood. She did not know what he was. She had studied the species of this planet in her lessons. Humans, they were called, Class 4 pre-contact species, primitive, dangerous. Her teachers had warned her to stay away from them. They said humans were violent and unpredictable. They said humans could not be trusted. But this human had run into fire for her. Looked at his burned hands. He had grabbed the metal beam that trapped her. She had seen the smoke rise from his skin. She had heard him make a sound of pain, but he had not let go. He had kept pulling until she was free. Then he had gone back for her mother. She did not understand. Why would he do that? He did not know them. He owed them nothing. They were not his people, not his kind. Why would he hurt himself so badly for strangers? The sound of sirens grew louder. Strange vehicles with flashing lights appeared through the trees. Humans in heavy clothing jumped out and ran toward them. They carried tools and equipment did not recognize. She pulled back, afraid. Her mother was still unconscious. She had no one to protect her. But the humans did not attack. They moved quickly to the burned man on the ground. They put something over his face to help him breathe. They wrapped his hands in white cloth. They spoke to each other in their strange language, their voices urgent but not angry. One of them noticed and her mother. He stopped. His eyes went wide. He said something to the others and they all turned to look. Expected fear. She expected violence. That was what her teachers had told her to expect from humans. Instead, the humans looked at each other. Then one of them, a woman with kind eyes, slowly walked toward. She knelt down and held out her hands, showing they were empty. She spoke softly, gently, the way you would speak to a frightened animal. Did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. She pointed at her mother. She touched her own leg where the violet blood had dried. She tried to show them that they needed help. The humans understood. More of them came. They brought soft beds on wheels. They carefully lifted Smother and put her on one of the beds. They tried to do the same for her, but she refused to leave her mother's side. So they let her stay close as they rolled her mother toward one of the vehicles. As they moved, looked back at the burned man. They were loading him into a different vehicle. His eyes were still closed. She wondered if he would live. She hoped he would live. The next few hours were a blur of confusion and fear. The humans took them to a building they called a hospital. It was white and clean and full of strange machines. Doctors and nurses gathered around them, talking quickly to each other. They did not know what to do with blue-skinned patients. They did not know if their medicine would work. But they tried anyway. Watched them work on her mother. They cleaned her wounds and wrapped them in bandages. They gave her fluids through a tube in her arm. They watched their machines and wrote notes and talked in worried voices. She wanted to tell them that biology was different. She wanted to explain that their medicine might not work the right way, but she did not speak their language and they did not speak hers. All she could do was wait. Sometime in the night, her mother woke up. Era opened her eyes slowly. She looked around the strange room, trying to understand where she was. Then she saw, and her face filled with relief. "My little star," she whispered, "you are safe." Threw herself into her mother's arms. She cried against her mother's chest, all the fear and stress of the past hours pouring out of her. "The human saved us," said between sobs. "He came into the fire, he carried me out, then he went back for you." Era was silent for a long moment. Her arms tightened around her daughter. "Tell me everything," she said. Told her. She described the crash, the fire, the human who had appeared out of nowhere. She described the way he had burned his hands, freeing her from the beam. She described the way he had shielded them from the explosion. When she finished, her mother's eyes were wet with tears. "Do you know what this means?" Era whispered. "What he did?" Shook her head. "He broke himself for us," her mother said. "He felt pain that should have stopped him and he kept going. He could have died and he knew it and he came anyway." Era looked toward the door. Somewhere in this building, the human who had saved her daughter was fighting for his life. "I have studied humans for 30 years," she said softly. "I thought I understood them. I thought I knew what they were capable of. But this—" She could not finish the sentence. 30 minutes later, the sky lit up again. But this time it was not fire. It was ships. 3 of them, massive and silver, descending through the clouds. The rescue fleet had arrived. Soldiers in gleaming armor surrounded the hospital. Diplomats in flowing robes rushed to find the ambassador. Medical teams with advanced technology took over the care of Era and in all the chaos, everyone kept asking the same question. What had happened? How had they survived? Era told them about the human. She described what he had done. She showed them her daughter, alive and mostly unharmed. She demanded that they find him, help him, save him the way he had saved her family. At first, the soldiers did not understand. A human had done this, a primitive from a pre-contact world. It did not make sense. Humans were supposed to be dangerous. They were supposed to be selfish. They were supposed to care only about their own kind. But the evidence was undeniable. The ambassador's daughter was alive because a human had chosen to burn. They found in a small room down the hall. He was unconscious, hooked up to human machines that beeped and hummed. His hands were wrapped in bandages. His arms were covered in burn cream and gauze. An oxygen mask covered his face. Pushed past the soldiers and ran to his bedside. She took his bandaged hand in both of hers, carefully, gently, trying not to hurt him more than he was already hurt. "Thank you," she whispered in her own language. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Did not hear her. He was deep in a healing sleep, his body trying to repair the damage he had done to it. But stayed by his side anyway. She held his hand and watched him breathe and refused to leave, no matter what anyone said. She had learned something tonight, something her teachers had never taught her, something that would change the way she saw the universe forever. Humans were not just violent, they were not just dangerous, they were also capable of something else, something powerful, something beautiful. They were capable of running into fire for strangers. And that meant everything her people thought they knew about this planet was wrong. The High Council had not met like this in 300 years. 12 of the most powerful beings in the Empire sat in a half-circle, their faces lit by floating screens that showed reports, images, and data. Above them, a massive window revealed the blue and green planet below. Earth, the world they had watched for 3,000 years, the world they had decided was too dangerous to contact. Ambassador Era stood before them. Her wounds had been healed by medicine, but she still looked tired. She had not slept since the crash. She had been too busy preparing for this moment. "Ambassador," said High Counselor and the oldest member of the council. His silver eyes were cold and sharp. "You understand why we have called you here?" "I do," Era replied. "A contamination event has occurred. Humans have seen our ships, they have seen our people, they have seen our technology. Standard protocol is clear. We must the witnesses. We must contain the incident. We must file a report and return things to the way they were." Era took a deep breath. "I refuse." The council chamber went silent. Several of the counselors leaned forward in their seats. No one had ever refused a direct order from the High Council before. "You refuse," and repeated slowly. "I refuse to allow you to the human who saved my daughter's life. I refuse to erase his memory of what he did. I refuse to treat him like a threat when he was nothing but a hero." Counselor, a younger woman with sharp features, spoke up. "Ambassador, we understand your gratitude, but the rules exist for a reason. Humans are not ready for contact. They are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. Every study we have done confirms this." "Every study you have done is wrong." The words hung in the air like thunder. Era walked to the center of the chamber. She raised her hand, and images appeared in the air above her. Images of the crash site, images of the fire, images of a human man running into an inferno that should have killed him. "For 3,000 years we have observed humanity from space," she began. "We have watched their wars. We have counted their weapons. We have recorded their acts of violence and cruelty. And from all of this we have decided that they are primitives, animals, creatures to be avoided and controlled." She paused. "In all that time, did we once observe this?" The images changed. Now they showed pulling from the wreckage. His hands were burning. His face was twisted in pain. But he did not stop. He did not let go. "A human who ran into fire," Era said. "Not for glory, not for reward, not for his own kind, but for strangers, for beings he had never seen before, for people his own species does not even know exist." She called up medical data. Numbers and charts filled the air. The counselors studied them with growing unease. "This is the human's medical report. Degree burns across 40% of his arms and hands, smoke damage to his lungs, cuts and bruises from climbing through torn metal. His body temperature reached dangerous levels. His pain receptors were firing at maximum capacity." She turned to face the council directly. "Any one of us would have collapsed. The pain alone would have stopped us. Our bodies are not built to override that kind of damage, but humans are different." She pulled up more data, studies of human biology, research on their nervous systems, reports from thousands of years of observation. "Humans feel pain just as strongly as we do, perhaps more strongly. Their bodies warn them of danger, of injury, of death. Every nerve screams at them to stop, to run, to save themselves." Her voice grew quiet. "But they can choose not to listen." The council was silent. This human knew he was being destroyed. Era continued. He felt every burn, every cut, every moment of agony, and he kept going, not because he did not feel the pain, but because he decided that my daughter's life was more important than his own. Counselor and stirred. Ambassador, one human does not represent his entire species. No, Era agreed. He does not, so let me tell you about the rest of them. More images appeared. Humans in heavy clothing running into burning buildings. Humans diving into rough water to save drowning strangers. Humans throwing themselves on explosive devices to protect their companions. Humans donating pieces of their own bodies to save people they had never met. They have a word for it, Era said. They call it sacrifice. It is woven into their culture, their stories, their very identity. They celebrate those who give themselves for others. They teach their children that the greatest thing a person can do is lay down their life for someone else. She turned to look at the planet below. We have watched them for 3,000 years. We have recorded every war, every murder, every act of hatred. And yes, they are capable of terrible things. They have hurt each other in ways that are hard to understand. They have built weapons that could destroy their own world. She faced the council again. But we never recorded this. We never studied the humans who run into fire. We never counted the acts of sacrifice, the moments of courage, the times when they chose to burn for each other. We saw only the darkness. We missed the light. The chamber was completely silent now, even and had nothing to say. Era walked toward her seat. Before she sat down, she turned one last time. You can follow protocol if you want. You can the witnesses. You can pretend this never happened. But I will not be part of it. And I will spend the rest of my life telling everyone what that human did for my daughter. She sat down. The question before this council is simple. For 3,000 years, we have judged humanity by their worst moments. Perhaps it is time we learn to see their best ones. The counselors looked at each other. They looked at the data. They looked at the images of a burned and bleeding human carrying a blue-skinned child out of an inferno. And slowly, one by one, they began to understand what the ambassador was trying to tell them. They had been watching humanity for 3,000 years. They had never really seen them at all. High Counselor N was the first to speak. What do you propose, Ambassador? Era smiled. It was a small smile, tired but hopeful. I propose we stop watching from the shadows. I propose we go down there and introduce ourselves. I propose we find out who these humans really are. She looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, a mechanic from a small town was sleeping in a hospital bed, his hands wrapped in bandages, unaware that his actions had just started a conversation that would echo across the galaxy. I propose, Era said softly, that we give humanity a chance. The vote was not unanimous, but it was enough. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Empire voted to make contact with the human race. And it all started because one man decided to run into a fire. Woke up slowly. His first thought was that everything hurt. His hands felt like they were wrapped in hot coals. His arms ached. His chest burned with every breath. He tried to open his eyes, but the light was too bright. His second thought was that he was not alone. He could hear breathing, lots of breathing, and whispers, quiet voices speaking in a language he did not recognize, the sound of armor shifting, the rustle of cloth. Slowly, carefully, he opened his eyes. His hospital room was full of aliens. Tall figures in silver armor stood along the walls. Their blue skin caught the light from the windows. Their purple eyes watched him with expressions he could not read. Some wore flowing robes instead of armor. Some carried devices that blinked and hummed. Blinked, he closed his eyes. He opened them again. The aliens were still there. He thought about the drugs. The doctors had given him something for the pain. Maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe this was all a dream. Maybe he had breathed in too much smoke and his brain was playing tricks on him. Then a small figure pushed through the crowd of tall beings. A girl with blue skin and silver hair. She climbed onto the side of his bed, her purple eyes bright with tears and joy. "Thank you," she said. Her accent was strange and the words came out slowly as if she had practiced them many times. But they were English, real English. Stared at her, he remembered now, the crash, the fire, the blue-skinned girl trapped under a metal beam, the woman he had dragged out just before the explosion. It had all been real. "You're welcome, kiddo," he managed to say. His voice was rough and weak, but he meant every word. The girl smiled at him. It was the thing in the room. Behind her, the crowd of aliens parted. A massive figure walked toward the bed. He was at least 8 feet tall, wearing armor that seemed to glow with inner light. His face was hard and his eyes were the color of deep water. He carried himself like a warrior, like someone who had seen 1,000 battles and won them all. This was High Commander Ran. Did not know his name yet. He did not know that this being led the most powerful military force in the galaxy. He did not know that this warrior had never knelt before anyone who was not of royal blood. He only knew that this giant alien was staring at him, with an expression that looked almost like awe. The commander stopped at the foot of the bed. He reached up and removed his helmet. His face was fully visible now. Blue skin, silver hair cut short, a jaw that looked like it was carved from stone, but his eyes were soft, almost gentle. "Human," the commander said. His voice was deep, and a small device on his collar translated his words into English. "Do you know what you have done?" Glanced at the girl, then back at the commander. "I pulled some people out of a fire, that's all." "That is not all." The commander took a step forward. "The child you saved is daughter of Ambassador Era. She is the closest thing our empire has to a princess. Her bloodline has ruled our people for 10,000 years. She is precious beyond measure." Looked at the girl. She was still sitting on the edge of his bed, still smiling at him. She did not look like royalty. She looked like a scared kid who had just survived something terrible. "I didn't know that," said honestly. "I just heard someone screaming. I went to help." "Yes," the commander said, "you did." He stepped closer. His massive form towered over the bed. "Among my people, there is a debt that cannot be repaid. When someone saves the life of your blood, you owe them something that has no price. No amount of wealth, no gift of power, no words of gratitude can ever balance the scales." Felt uncomfortable. He was not good with attention. He was just a mechanic from a small town. He fixed cars and answered fire calls. He did not know how to handle an alien warlord telling him he was owed an impossible debt. "There is only one way to honor such a debt," the commander continued. "Only one gesture that our culture considers worthy." And then High Commander Ran, leader of the military, veteran of 1,000 campaigns, knelt. He lowered himself to one knee, right there in the hospital room, his armor scraping against the floor. He bowed his head. Behind him, every in the room followed. Warriors knelt, diplomats knelt, scientists knelt, guards knelt, servants knelt. Every single alien in that crowded hospital room went down on one knee before the burned and confused human in the bed. Did not know what to say. He had never been more uncomfortable in his life. "We name you Iran," the commander said, his head still bowed. "Protector of the sacred. It is a title that has not been given in 5,000 years. You have earned it." "What does that mean?" asked. The commander looked up, his eyes met. "It means that no one will ever raise a hand against you or yours. Every door in our empire will be open to you. Every honor that our people can give is yours to claim. You will be written into our histories. Your name will be taught to our children. For as long as our species exists, we will remember what you did." Shook his head slowly. "I don't understand. I just did what anyone would do." The commander's expression changed. For a moment he looked almost sad. "No," he said quietly, "they would not." He rose to his feet. The other rose with him. "We have watched your kind for 3,000 years. We have studied you. We have feared you. We have kept our distance because we believed you were dangerous." The commander paused. "We never once considered that you might also be brave." He looked at the girl, still sitting on the bed. "My own warriors would have hesitated at those flames. The heat was beyond what our bodies can tolerate. The pain would have been overwhelming. And yet you, a human, a being from a species we considered primitive, you ran in without a second thought." Thought about the fire. He remembered the heat, the smoke, the way his skin had felt like it was melting off his bones. He remembered the moment when he could have stopped, could have turned back, could have saved himself. He remembered deciding not to. "I was scared," he admitted. "The whole time, I was terrified, but there was a kid in there. I couldn't just leave her." The commander nodded slowly. "That is what makes you remarkable, not that you felt no fear, but that you felt fear and went anyway." Reached out and took's bandaged hand. She held it gently, carefully, like it was something precious. "You are my Iran now," she said. "My protector, my family, is that okay?" Looked at the little blue-skinned girl. He thought about his empty apartment. He thought about his quiet life. He thought about all the years he had spent alone, with no one to take care of except himself. "Yeah," he said softly, "that's okay." The girl's smile grew even brighter. And somewhere in the back of the room, Ambassador Era watched the scene with tears streaming down her face. She had spent 30 years studying humans. She had written reports and given lectures and thought she understood them. She had never understood them at all. Until now. 6 months had changed everything. Stood at the window of his hotel room and looked out at the city of New York. Below him, the streets were filled with people. Humans. A few other species he had learned to recognize over the past months. They walked side by side, talking, laughing, living together in ways that would have seemed impossible half a year ago. First contact had been messy. Of course it had been. Governments had panicked. Militaries had mobilized. Religious leaders had argued about what it all meant. News channels had run the same footage over and over. Silver ships descending from the sky, blue-skinned aliens stepping onto Earth's soil, the whole world watching with a mix of wonder and fear. But it had also been hopeful. That was the part had not expected. People were curious. They wanted to learn. They wanted to meet these beings from another world. They had 1,000 questions, 1,000,000 questions, and most of them were not about weapons or war. They were about food, music, art, family, love. Humanity, it turned out, was not just interested in conquering the galaxy. They wanted to make friends in it. A knock on the door pulled from his thoughts. He turned as entered the room. She was wearing a formal dress in the style, silver and flowing, but she had added a denim jacket over it. A gift from a human girl she had met at a school in Montana. "Are you ready?" she asked. Looked down at his own clothes. They had given him a suit, an expensive one tailored to fit perfectly. He felt like a stranger in it. "Not really," he admitted. Walked over and stood beside him. In the 6 months since the crash, she had grown, not just taller but in other ways. She spoke English fluently now. She had made friends among both species. She had started calling her second father, and he had started believing it. "You will be wonderful," she said. "You always are." Smiled at her. "You have too much faith in me, kid." "No," she said. "I have exactly the right amount." An hour later, stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The room was massive. Thousands of seats rose in tiers around a central stage. Representatives from every nation on Earth were present. But that was not all. Screens floated in the air above the chamber, showing the faces of delegates from 10,000 other species. The entire Galactic Council was watching. Had never been good at public speaking. He had never been good at any kind of speaking, really. He was a mechanic. He fixed things with his hands, not his words. But had asked him to do this, and he had never been good at saying no to her. He stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. "I've been told I did something special," he began. His voice was rough and plain, not polished like the diplomats who usually spoke here. "Something that proved humanity was worth knowing. But I need you all to understand. I'm not special. I'm not the best humanity has to offer. I'm just a guy." He held up his hands. The scars from the fire were still visible, pink and puckered, a map of what he had done that night. "Where I come from, we have people who run into burning buildings for a living. We have people who jump on bombs to save their friends. We have people who give parts of their own bodies to strangers, who adopt children that are not their own, who spend their lives helping people they will never meet." He looked at the screens above him. Thousands of alien faces looked back. "You've been watching us for a long time, trying to figure out if we're worth the risk, if we're dangerous, if we're ready." He paused. "We are dangerous. We're not ready. We're messy and violent, and we make terrible mistakes." His voice softened. "But we also run into fires. We don't know how not to." The chamber was completely silent. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if humanity will make you proud or disappoint you. I don't know if we'll become good partners or difficult neighbors. What I do know is that we will try. We will stumble and we will fall, and sometimes we will hurt each other and ourselves. But we will also pick each other up. We will also reach into the darkness to pull out anyone who needs help." He looked at the front row, was sitting there beaming at him. Beside her was Ambassador Era, who had become like a sister to him in the past months. Behind them sat representatives from species he was only beginning to learn about. All of them were watching. All of them were listening. "You know what I remember most about that night?" asked. "It wasn't the fire. It wasn't the pain. It wasn't even the fear. What I remember is the moment I heard a child screaming, and the only thought in my head was that I had to help. That's it. That's all there was. A kid needed help and I was going to give it." He stepped back from the podium. "That's who humans are. That's who we've always been. We see someone in trouble and something in us says go. It doesn't matter if we know them. It doesn't matter if they look like us. It doesn't matter if we're scared or hurt or outmatched. Something in us says go and we go." He shrugged. "Maybe that makes us crazy. Maybe that makes us dangerous. But I think it also makes us worth knowing. I think it makes us worth believing in. And I hope, if you give us a chance, we can prove that to you." He stepped down from the stage. For a long moment there was silence. Then started clapping. It was just her at first, a small blue-skinned girl in a denim jacket applauding a mechanic from Montana. But then her mother joined in. Then the other. Then the human delegates. Then the screens above, as aliens across the galaxy began to add their own forms of applause. The sound built and built until it filled the chamber like thunder. Stood in the middle of it, uncomfortable and embarrassed, wishing he could go back to his shop and fix a car engine. But ran to him and hugged him, and he knew that he was exactly where he needed to be. After the speech, things moved quickly. Treaties were signed. Embassies were established. Exchange programs began. Humans traveled to other worlds and aliens traveled to Earth. The universe opened up in ways that no one had imagined. There were problems, of course. There always were. Some humans feared the aliens. Some aliens still distrusted the humans. Old wounds took time to heal and new ones were sometimes created. But something had changed, something fundamental. Humanity was no longer alone, and the galaxy was no longer quite so sure about what they thought they knew. Never became comfortable with his fame. He never learned to enjoy the attention or the speeches or the ceremonies. He remained, at his core, a quiet man who liked fixing things with his hands. But he also became a father. Sufficial adoption was the first of its kind, a human taking legal guardianship of a child. It was complicated and messy and required more paperwork than had ever seen in his life. It was also the best thing he ever did. Years later, When people asked him about that night, about the fire and the rescue and the moment that changed two worlds, always gave the same answer. "I just did what anyone would do," he would say. And by then, after watching humanity take its first steps into the stars, many in the galaxy had started to believe him. Maybe that was what made humans special after all. Not that they were braver than other species, but that they genuinely believed everyone else would be brave too. And somehow in their presence, that belief became contagious. The age of isolation was over. The age of humanity had just begun. And it all started because one man, on a cold night in Montana, decided to run into a fire,